With every fiber of my being, I'm not a fan of game exclusivity. I simply believe that it is, in a sense, counterintuitive. Now, many people disagree with me. In fact, most people can cite in their minds what they think is evidence that exclusivity can actually push a brand forward in one way or the other. Now, this is very interesting because at the end of the day, there are different approaches to all of this. I concede that if you own a property, you can make it exclusive. I'm not going to say Disney should be putting freaking Snow White on other streaming platforms unless they want to do so. Because the Snow White, cartoons from back in the day or whatever IPs they make and they own belong to them. Like, this is just, common sense. However, it hasn't stopped them from moving stuff, or it hasn't stopped other people who own IPs from moving them to other platforms. For instance, WB, Warner Brothers had its own streaming service, or has had different variations for streaming, and most recently HBO Max. HBO Max, in my opinion, was very interesting in its curation and all of the above. But they were putting a lot of Warner Brothers movies on HBO Max after a while. However, if you look more recently, Netflix now has access to a lot of these movies from time to time. So Warner Brothers themselves decided that they were going to put these shows and these movies, I don't know if they put any shows, but these movies that were owned by them on that platform. Cool. Why did they do so? In order for them to be able to make money. Maybe their service was not pulling in, say, as many, viewers as they would want. But at the end of the day, nobody was expecting them to do it. They decided to do it because it was expedient for them to make money around it. That's fine. So when I make my videos and when I talk about exclusivity, I really do understand exactly where I stand at the end of the day. In terms of gaming, to me, I think that these publishers should be open. This is Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo. I think they should be open to exploring other audiences. The gaming industry is changing and shifting things that way anyway. So all I got to do is sit here and wait for them to need enough money. And you're going to eventually see games starting to make their way to other platforms. MLB The Show, a game that is always every year developed by San Diego Studios right now, has an Xbox version. Why? Because money. MLB wanted more money. It has to take an external factor like the market to push things like that. So I don't have to worry about it. If the market says, hey, y'all are going to make games for everybody else, then they're going to make games for everybody else. It's not going to have to be a big issue at the end of the day. So these are my thoughts about the whole conversation. To this, I have to point out money hatting. You see, I've made maybe 24 videos on this particular conversation, but I think more and more we need to continue to talk about it because it's a very anti-consumer, anti-competitive practice. It really is something that stinks in the gaming industry. It's worse than actually making you pay to play your games over the internet online. Why? Because what this is one particular party leveraging its influence and pushing around in the industry ways to make the other platform look irrelevant because they do not want to compete fairly. The recent example is PlayStation trying to go and money hat the Crimson Desert the Crimson Desert game from Pearl Abyss and seeing them get rejected. Over time and all these years, yes, both Xbox and PlayStation have been money hatting. And I think money hatting did Xbox in. I've said this in my other videos. It shot them in the foot because they depended on these money hatting deals. I think you're seeing almost the exact same thing happen to PlayStation. Why? They are not investing in their AA titles. They're pretty much trying to use these AA games to fill the void while they invest their money in AAA titles. But this particular, business strategy is now backfiring. Because you see, and I've pointed this out, and I'm going to point it as much as I can. We need to see this. This is crazy. Now, you see the Gravity Rush director basically saying that he would love to direct a third, iteration of the game if given the opportunity. Why does he have to be saying this? Why is PlayStation not doing so? Why did they close Japan Studio and take those funds and start to chase down other games in the market? And then in their own funds, they're also going ahead to pretty much pursue live services as well. So again, it's a misdirection and people want to defend this stuff. Yet somehow you come out here and say you don't want the live service games that they're making. If you don't want the live service games, then you need to speak up against them spending their money trying to get other games rather and make games that are small scale within the PlayStation ecosystem. This is how you actually, in a sense, push for change and enforce the change that you want. But you can't defend PlayStation when they're wasting their money and then at the same time complain for what you get shafted by allowing the things that are causing you to get shafted every single time. So one thing that I, have to point out to is this particular industry practice, in my opinion, has robbed PlayStation players of a lot. It even robbed Xbox players of a lot. I mean, think about it. Xbox barely had many, games that it wanted to invest in by the time it reached the Xbox One generation. Why? It had been sitting there money hatting. PlayStation, on the other hand, had games all over the place. They resurrected old games and remastered them. They brought new versions of their old little games in the PlayStation 4 generation. And then on top of that, they dropped big, massive games. And on top of that, they money-hatted games. At that time, you could actually just play a lot of the PlayStation games and not even bother with the exclusive money-added third-party games. And PlayStation would still have been fine. Xbox, on the other hand, did not have that one thing with it and had depended on the money-hatting fighting from the Xbox 360 days to the point where by Xbox One, nobody could recognize Xbox as a platform anymore. So why would we defend this as the PlayStation community and then think that this is going to turn out better? This is why PlayStation is getting clapped back and forth in this particular, tail end of this new generation, because they don't have any games and they can't secure these games fast enough because developers are starting to find out that gamers like a specific kind of game, Call of Duty and the games you play with your friends, and they're not going to spend all their time and their money playing these single player titles as much as they will the live service games. So what needs to happen right now is that they need to actually find a very good way to ensure that their players have enough games to play that are, low budget to make, and they can actually enjoy the possibility of being profitable around them, rather than going to block other games from going to Xbox. That to me is weird because they feel threatened by Xbox. You can't say, as a PlayStation fan that Xbox is dead or whatever it is, when PlayStation, all they do is try to pretty much make them look irrelevant, when if they went head to head, tit for tat, PlayStation cannot necessarily deal with the amount of content that they're able to, drop here in the next few months. That's wild. And I think that's something that must be concerning and looked into. So these are my thoughts on exclusivity. These are my thoughts on money hatting. I keep seeing comments of people saying, why is it such a big deal now? What's going on now? And I'm like, no, it's a big deal because it's always been a big deal. How do you, as a platform, try to play a bait and switch on me by coming to me with games that I'm already supposed to get and say that you're providing those games for me by blocking them from going to another platform when you could use those funds to actually make games that I'm interested in? I mean, that to me is crazy. It's like trying to sell ice to an Eskimo at the end of the day. It's not going to work. I think people, are basically letting the man behind the curtain just dictate to them. But man, we need to basically, look behind what's in the curtain and understand that this industry practice needs to be looked at very carefully. In fact, there should be laws against that. Like where you're going to go pay somebody money to block a video game from going to another platform, a video game that was already being made, for that platform. I mean, think about it. A lot of you were, complaining that Xbox was going to go buy Activision Blizzard, and you were worried about that. You were worried about Bethesda's acquisition, right? Because you knew what the implications could be. PlayStation was worried about Call of Duty because it knew what the implications could be. But at the end of the day, now those IPs belong to Xbox, and they can do whatever they want with them. But IPs that don't belong to both of them, they need to stay with their publishers, and their developers need to be able to make the choices and decisions that they want without having that influence from PlayStation, putting it in contracts that they block a game for a certain time to go to Xbox. That's crazy. That's crazy. And if you think that's normal, I don't know what to tell you, man. Thanks for watching the video. Appreciate you guys so much. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.